Hello, hello, and welcome to another Africam show. I hope that you're all doing well. And if this is your first time joining us, well, congratulations. It's about time you stumbled across this wonderful site. And of course, this is a live and interactive safari, which means that you are able to chat to me. And I'm very excited to hear from you. If this is your first time watching, as I always say, please let me know so that I can introduce you to the rest of the Africam community. Now, there's a couple of you who are here and saying hello. So we've got Amber Co. Hello, hello. You said you're waving hello. I'm waving back, although you can't see me. And I have a very awkward wave, which is a pity because you'd probably enjoy that. Casper's Third Ghost, you said good morning / afternoon. It is afternoon for me, but I'd say good morning to so many people this afternoon. So it's not going well for me today. But you also said hello to everybody else and that you're ready for birds and babies. Zygote, namaste. I hope you're doing well. And then dear NC, you've said a hello from a rainy Seattle, and you've got a hot cup of coffee and you're waiting for some awesome camera viewing. Jack de Boer, Jack de Boer. What happened there? Great to have you on board. You said you're morning from Virginia. This is great. This is great. So right now we are looking at a fish eagle, but I'm not sure where this fish eagle is. But don't worry, the powers that be are going to let me know. But what a fantastic view. It actually couldn't have been a clearer view. This lovely dead branch extending horizontally and the bird sitting right there. Yes, it is. It's in Hwange National Park in Zimbabwe. And this is from The Hide, which is a pretty amazing spot. If you ever get the opportunity to, of course, visit any safari locations with hides, whether you're photographic inclined or you just like to sit and watch wildlife, 100% recommend it. And then Bridget McKinney, you said hello. It's great to have you on board once again. Now I'm trying to look, and I'm glad that you can't see me today because I have my computer right up in front of my face. Are you standing on one leg? It looks like it, right? I can't see the other foot. It's right foot. Yeah, right foot. So I had to turn around there, obviously, to do that. So I wonder if it's just resting it at the moment. Quite often see that in birds. Well, doing it, I think flamingos are probably the most famous. We see it with a lot of storks, but pretty much quite a few of the bird species, of course, are able to do something like this. Have not seen an ostrich doing it before. So, well, do they do it? I don't even know. But anyways, and I just think it's pretty amazing that they are able to hold on or balance or whatever they may be doing with just one leg, but they've got special adaptations to be able to do so. And I'm sure a lot of practice goes a long way. Karu, I'm wondering when you were going to pop in and say hello. You said that you've got milk today. Delicious. And then April R, you said hello from a cloudy Connecticut. You've got berry muffins and cherry iced tea. Berry muffins. What kind of berries? April R. I don't have anything right now. I was drinking water just a moment ago, and now I'm just sitting. Also, I'm not in Hoedspruit in South Africa. I'm actually in Johannesburg. And it's strange to be here because they have traffic lights and roundabouts, and I'm not very well accustomed to them. But anyways, so African fish eagles, right? Probably the most iconic bird within Africa. The call that most people love, and it's a sound that I cannot live without. But luckily, where I do live in Hoedspruit, I tend to hear them every day, well, at least once a day, with a river being nearby. However, I'm probably not going to find any fish eagles here in Johannesburg, so it's a bit sad. Just lots of cars and all sorts of other noises. But it is nice to, of course, hear the peace and quiet in Zimbabwe. Now, it's also very difficult to tell the difference between male and female, in case you're wondering, because they almost look identical. If they're sitting together, that's great. The females tend to be a little bit larger, and then there's some slight differences with how far the white on the chest and the breast, how far that extends. Who knows, maybe we'll get a second one landing soon. But for the moment, it's probably just enjoying itself, waiting, hoping with the water that's nearby, it might see some movement, maybe a silvery flash from a fish as it turns and the light reflects off of it, or any just movement. And quite often, when the water is quite murky and maybe you don't have a lot of freshwater fish species that would typically have traditional scales, then something like, for example, a frog or a catfish of sorts, they don't have traditional scales. They're so slimy. That's not going to give off a reflection at all. But the movement in the water quite often leaves a bit of a murky mud trail. And I'm sure they figured out which way, the creature is going. You can imagine that the most murkiness will be where they've moved from, and it will obviously get less and less. But that's not something that we're necessarily able to see because our eyes aren't designed particularly well. But if you put on a pair of polarized sunglasses, it does make it a little bit easier. And that's another great adaptation that birds typically have is that, they're able to polarize light in a slightly different manner. But now we've got a cuckoo. Hello, cuckoo. We're back in South Africa, and this is at Rosie's Pad. Did you just have a drink of water? I think we may have just missed that, or maybe it was having a bath. And I don't know if the camera has now frozen. Oh no, there we go. What are you doing? Just exploring. These birds are really great to watch because they're so active. So they don't hunt in the air. They are individuals that will spend a lot of time on the ground, sort of frolicking through leaf litter, bounding through the thickets or out in the open like this and hope to find something. And there's literally nothing that's off the menu. I've seen them eating lizards. I've seen them feeding on rodent species. I've seen them feeding on snakes before. I'm sure if they get hold of a bird, maybe if there's a nest nearby and they find it, they would raid that too. Oh, it's just sort of hopping along. So you can see quite a big stride. When they move, it almost reminds me of starlings running around, especially something like a virtual starling, which is much taller than the Cape or the greater blue-eared starlings that we see regularly around this waterhole. Oh, so I think it's just scouring the edge, looking for any opportunities. Maybe some insects, although those are few and far between, but I have still been seeing lots and lots of grasshoppers around. Okay, we're going to move. It seems like we're going to have a birding day today, which is fabulous. But now that the cuckoo has flown off, let's go back to Zimbabwe to the hide for another special bird. This is awesome. Okay, back in Zimbabwe, same location where the fish eagle is, however, just slightly lower down. And this is a smaller species of heron. Now, there are a couple that you can see that look fairly similar to this, but once you step outside of South Africa, it is so special because it's not a bird we get to see all the time, but how many squacko herons are actually around. Zambia and Botswana are absolutely filled with them. And also in minor pools in Zimbabwe, I've seen them, but I have not been to Hwange National Park just yet. But, well, clearly they're here. They're not normally herons that would like to be like out in the open, like we would typically see with maybe some of the bigger heron species. Much like the striated or greenback heron, they do prefer a little bit of vegetation for cover. It doesn't necessarily have to be tall grass, but in areas where you see a lot of water hyacinth, which is sadly an invasive aquatic species of plant that has found its ways into waterways all over the world, they tend to overtake like water holes, especially when there's not a lot of rain. And then they're happy to also move around on that too. You see, there's obviously this. What is there? 3 of them that I can see so far. Maybe there's a few more. Obviously difficult to tell, but maybe this is 2 adults and a juvenile from this previous breeding season. Or like I said, maybe there's another one lurking about and it's just a little social community. Just trying to see if I can hear a bit better. There we go. I just had to shuffle around a little bit. We're quite zoomed in at the moment. There are lots of other things. It sounds like other bird species, but I can't quite identify them just yet. Something that I love about these smaller species of herons is that they look little and so unassuming. You know, when you look at a gray heron or a black-headed heron, purple, Goliath heron, all of those species, or even the blue heron, of course, they've got such long necks and they're obvious because they're extended for the most part. Whereas these smaller species of herons, when relaxed, tend to bring them in. So this is not a true representation of how big this bird is. But when you do see them hunting on the edge of the water and they find something, and watching them shoot their necks out like a spear almost, they tend to be quite long. I remember seeing that for the first time. Okay, I've been really lucky. I grew up in the bush and going on safari since before I could even walk, but it's not necessarily something that I paid attention to. But when I first started guiding and I saw greenback herons and black-crowned night herons on the reserve that I first started working at. I was just like, my goodness, I never expected that to happen. But I suppose, again, I was just naive and inexperienced. I think I still am naive and inexperienced. I don't know why I even said that. I've got so much to learn. But there's not much else happening around the water's edge. You would think with this grass cover and that we'd start to see a few more bird species too. Okay, well, there are other birds here now because you can hear the blacksmith lapwings, of course, the grey go-away bird going on in the background as they typically do. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a little three-banded plover around here. And then, I was just thinking with all this grass that we would maybe see a couple of little warblers or maybe even some of the prunier species, a few more waders. Oh, and then Bridget McKinney, you said that this is a cool looking heron. It is because it's white and they sort of stand out a lot more. It's almost this isn't a true like a reflection. I feel like when you see them in person, they tend to be a lot brighter. This is such a pair. There we go, ringneck doves. Oh, hello. Who have we got coming down to have a little drink? A bushbuck. He's bending down, choosing to not drink from the main part of the waterhole, but rather this little inlet over here. It looks like there's a small pool of water. I think that's what the doves were going to as well. It's so clever. As soon as animals approach the water's edge, there's infinite danger. Seeing the crocodiles are prolific and it's ingrained in these animals' instincts to be afraid of water. Unless they've, somewhere, like for example, let's say in Etosha, where there aren't any crocodiles. And for a very long period of time, then the animals they happily go into the water without even double checking. Great view of a bushbuck, though, one of the shyer animals. Normally see them just as a fleeting glimpse. And she didn't stick around for too long. Not that they don't necessarily feel comfortable out in the open, but when you're a solitary animal, sometimes it's best to stick to the thickets, like, out of sight, out of mind. Okie dokie. We actually are going to head to Hwange Safari Lodge now and see what's lurking about. Wow. This is so epic. I think this is the first time I've actually seen this camera. Well, had the opportunities to narrate it. We've got baboons on the top left, and then gray-crowned cranes, and an impala now charging on through. This is awesome. Such a special bird to see, the gray-crowned cranes. Again, not something we typically see in South Africa, but in the rest of Southern Africa, they are quite popular and common. Now they're just walking. So I don't know where they're walking to, maybe this little water's edge, but grey crown cranes don't need to be around water at all for the most part. They'll spend their days also walking through tall grass, catching insects. But again, they'll eat anything from a little snake to an insect to a frog to a fish, you name it. So, by having these diverse habitats, an area with water, an area with the grassland, and then maybe heading into a thicket of some kind, it can provide different food opportunities. And of course, the long-legged, sorry, everything froze for a second. The long-legged marabou stork. I stopped talking as soon as I saw everything freezing. Absolutely love them. Such a strange bird to see. While I was in India at the moment, they have something that looks almost identical to a marabou stork, but they call them lesser and greater adjutants. And I was so lucky because I got to see both species. I'd only ever seen the lesser adjutant before. So it was nice to add a new bird to my list. The impala are eating something. I can't see exactly what it is, but I'm also just wondering, in areas where seasons become extremely dry, and an area like Hwange is not particularly like tropical, if I can use that's not the right use of the word, but it tends to be drier and more arid. So you can see, look how short the grass is already, and we're only, the middle of May. Um, what camps will actually do is put these salt blocks out. So it's a way for the animals to be able to get vital nutrition, but specifically minerals like calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, or you kind of name it. Lots of those will be in there. And in some areas, like if we go into Kenya, for an example, if we go into the Masai Mara, there's a famous area called the Salt Licks. And that's because there's an enormous depression where a lot of the minerals have gathered, probably because of, runoff and soil erosion that typically tends to exasperate that. And then it all meets in the middle. And you'll see during dry season so many animals there, just trying to get as much as possible. But there they'll just be feeding on the soil. So think of like geophagy, for examples, where they'll eat soil, soils. I suppose you see animals having tonguefuls of it if you're an elephant. Otherwise, zebras and things will lick the ground. But this is obviously an easier way for them to get that. And then Kauru, you said that the blacksmith lapwing is upset. I would be too. Now, there are some birds that are still nesting quite late. Some of the ground dwelling birds actually breed throughout the dry season. And you've got all these different animals moving around. I'd be annoyed too. I'd be going, don't step on my eggs, or this is my territory. But blacksmith lapwings just like to shout at everybody. Them, fork-tailed drongos, three-banded plovers, and I suppose crowned lapwings as well. My goodness. Also starting to see how the herds of impala are breaking up now that the rut for the most part is over. So funny though, in Hoedspruit at night, I'm still hearing a few impalas doing that sort of gurgly sound, declaring their territories to everybody. But I haven't seen any more mating, and like I said, I'm starting to see the herds breaking up now. So not so strict, one male and a group of females, but rather a couple of males intermingling within the females now. Boss, what are you doing? Just up there, also taking a break, doing some self-care, assisting others with self-care, and a big zebra. I don't know if it's eating the grass now or maybe licking up the soil. I think it's probably, it doesn't look like there's much grass there, but who knows? Isn't this a great view? Can you imagine at this lodge just lounging during the day? As you know, some days I'm like, you don't even need to go on a safari when you have a view like this. It's nice and warm. There's water nearby, but it has started drying up a significant amount. The amount of action that you could see in front of this camp as the day goes on would be surprising. And this park is known for its lion populations. So how great would that be? A pride lion strolling on by to come for a drink, and who knows, maybe they spot something that could be quite tasty. So if you're ever feeling sort of tired and not wanting to go on a drive or a walk, stay at the lodge. Just enjoy yourself, catch up on that rest, and enjoy views like this. Also, just nice to see so many different animals intermingling with one another, not really bothering each other. I am interested in the fact as to where the rest of the zebra are. I'm trying to have a look to see if it is looks like a stallion. And if it is a stallion, then that makes it a little bit easier to explain, is that it could be either a really old male that doesn't have a harem anymore. He's just not able to keep up with the young whippersnappers and hold on to his females. Or maybe it's a younger male that has, been pushed out from his natal herd and is now going to try and start. Oh, they're the other zebra, never mind. Also, I'll just finish anyways, and they try and start their own herds, which is really interesting to see, because quite typically they start with stealing females from other harems, and that's a very dangerous process to do. If you can get it right, well done. If not, it ends up in a serious fight with the current stallion. And marabou stalks always look so miserable. Not doing too much. A bit of drinking. Oh, that's a baboon that you can hear. Okay. The birds are not up to too much. So let's head to one of my favorite African countries and check out a bird that is a really good hunter. There we go. We're at Lentoria in Kenya, which is nice. We should hear some new birds chatting around, or some that are maybe you're not familiar with. But this is a Hamerkop. They are such interesting birds in a number of different ways. I mean, right now we're obviously seeing it wade through the water, looking for something to eat, and it's quite diverse as to how they can feed. So you can see it's sort of poking the water with its mouth open. Maybe it's hoping to just grab something that's sitting there, or it could disturb it, and then it will see when it moves away. Kind of like what I was talking about, where they would not necessarily be looking for the animal itself, because that water is very murky, but looking for and well, that's a Hamerkop sound. So this is more than likely the pair that lives here. I'm sure for those of you that watch this camera regularly that you have seen them. And when you are a bird that is monogamous, so lives in pairs, it's a good way to just obviously keep reassuring the bonds by singing a song, by preening one another, cleaning their feathers, and just, I suppose, overall spending a bit of time together. They display quite often. There you go. Might even end up in mating. Let's see. There we go. There we go. That's nice. Great. I wonder where their nest is. Must be somewhere around here. So mating in birds is so fascinating, with ostriches being the weird exception. But for the most part, they have something called a cloaca, depending on your pronunciation, but that's how I say it. And they don't have didn't want to disrupt them or take anything away from that moment. But essentially, what they do, they have these cloacas, but they've got no external reproductive organs. Everything is internal. So it's essentially a stimulation from the cloaca from both sides, and then the males will deposit sperm that way. It's so fascinating. The reason why I say ostriches are a little bit different is because if you want to laugh, Google male ostrich reproductive parts or something along those lines. You will have a good chuckle. It looks like nothing you've ever seen before, unless you've seen that. Kaura, you've said that they complain so much. I think they're chatting. They're just saying, again, reassuring the bonds, male trying to entice the female, getting involved, singing in agreement. And then Bridget McKinney, you said that you love the Hamerkop shuffle. That is great. We need to start putting together a dance to that. Maybe we can take their call and turn it into I don't know, a song at the club. Some real dance music, but I'm not sure if Hamerkop are into that. But anyways, that's my suggestion. Beautiful birds, though. I think out of all the birds I've sat and watched when they start hunting, Hamerkops are quite often the most successful. And they take advantage of small pools of water too, which is fascinating. And then they'll just decimate that, catch absolutely everything. I've seen them in puddles where I thought there can't possibly be anything in there. And then the amount of frogs, and especially the platanas, the frogs that are mostly aquatic, they don't really spend much time on land at all unless they're moving from one point to another. And they'll just bring out so many of those. Got some doves that have landed. Sorry, I'm struggling to see what dove it actually is. I didn't see if I just couldn't get the coloration. I didn't see the eye color or anything like that. And there are obviously a few different species. And then Jack DeBoer, going back to the Hamerkop, she said that they are very caring parents. They are. Absolutely, they are. I think all birds or every animal tries to do its best, but like we see, not every individual is good at parenting as perhaps maybe another. And, with the massive nests that they make with sticks and branches, they line it with mud and grass. I mean, that's a pretty safe place in there. Nice and cozy too. So I reckon the temperature stays at a consistent level. But everybody's gone now. Okay, so we've done so much birding. I think we're going to just change it a little bit. Well, sort of. And we're going to head towards Tau, which is in Madikwe Game Reserve, to have a look at a reptilian. Sure. Also, it's been a long time since I've enjoyed this view. Still fairly green, but the grasses have definitely dropped. And looks like the elephants have done some work. Now we're going to see if we can find the crocodile. There it is. Good spot, catching the last of the afternoon light. There was also a black drake running around. This individual looks so yellow in color, but the colors of reptiles varies all over the world. Sometimes even within like provinces we have, or states. But not up to too much at all. But when you're a crocodile, you don't need to have to worry about doing things. Oh my gosh, it sounds like we have got an even better crocodile, in the words of Kirsten. She says that there is an enormous one at Roy's Dam in the Sabi Sand Game Reserve. Oh, it's not even bigger. I made that up. I thought it was going to be bigger. It's in fact much smaller, but this is definitely a better view. Sometimes I just like to spice things up. I would say 95% of the time it works, and then 5% of the time I just look like a fool, but I'm used to looking like that. I don't mind. So yeah, much younger crocodile. You can actually just see how compact it is. Look at the snout in relation to its body. Its head's still got to do a bit of growing, a bit of extending, and also not doing much at all. Has got its head lifted off the ground though, but once again, just trying to get as much of the warmth in as possible. And the evenings are getting quite chilly now, well, especially for us in South Africa. And around Sylvan and that area, there's quite a few big drainage systems, and the temperature will drop even more so, and especially around the water holes. So the crocodiles will come out and sun themselves as much as they can before it gets too cold, and then they'll enter the water. And the water temperatures also hold the heat for a little bit longer, so that'll be a more suitable spot until they can come out the next day when the sun is around. I have no idea actually how big this crocodile is. I'm trying to figure it out, but we haven't got much in like relation. Oh, there we go, slowly opening its mouth a bit. Oh, this could be because it is trying to warm itself up even more. I'm just trying to see if I'm seeing much of a flutter. From here, I can't really see much of a flutter. So basically, where its jaw ends, where the last set of teeth are, then just down to where its throat would be, or the gular, you'll see that moving quite a bit when they're trying to cool themselves down. So with the current temperatures and the way that this individual is behaving, I think it's just trying to allow more of the warmth onto its body so it can regulate its temperatures. This individual's going to be more active in terms of hunting. They've got to grow, and they're smaller, so they'll also feed on lots of different things. What was that? It's a buffalo bellowing. I'm not sure. But Bridget McKinney, you said that you've popped onto the internet and you've had a look at an ostrich penis, and you said it's weird. It is. It's very strange. Now you've heard from Bridget in case you weren't convinced. It's a strange thing. Really bizarre. I haven't seen Roy's Dam before. I'm not actually sure how big this area is. If it's a large dam or is it a relatively small one? Because we normally start to see a lot of the smaller crocodiles moving away from the big uh, bodies of water. And that'll mean just less competition. Because remember, crocodiles, or a lot of animals, they perform cannibalism, right? So they'll eat smaller crocodiles too. We're going to go and have a look at a wide. Oh, it's not that big. I'm trying to think if I've seen this before. I can't remember. I don't know how far it extends off to the right, but it doesn't look very deep at all. Yeah, no, that's quite a small crocodile. So yeah, the more it eats, the quicker it can grow. And lots of impala also making their way around. What a great... Oh, sorry for all the dogs barking. They're not mine, so I can't even tell them to keep quiet. Keep quiet, dogs. That didn't work. But sorry, as I was saying, great place. Lots of grass along the edges. The water is nice and murky. This crocodile, even though it's just sitting here, seeming like it's not doing much other than potentially enjoying the last of the afternoon warmth, it is watching the antelope. It's watching every single animal that comes down to have a drink at this dam. This is beautiful, in fact. And what that croc will be doing is going to be learning about the areas that the animals are visiting most. Now, there's always going to be a preferred drinking spot, and that preferred drinking spot typically doesn't have much vegetation around us. It's more on the shallow side of things, sort of easy access for something like an impala or antelope species. Of course, buffalo and elephants, hippos, they'll just come barging straight in. Same thing with rhinos. They'll have no problem at all from drinking wherever. And, that could be a really great way for that crocodile to start catching slightly bigger prey. There's lots of young impala lambs around at the moment. They are getting bigger, but even unsuspecting birds that will come and drink at the water's edge will be perfect for that crocodile to snatch. But like I said, nothing is off the menu. Crocodiles, they literally just eat absolutely everything. Okay, I can't believe how dry it's got. It's bizarre. I mean, we had a decent amount of rainfall this year in the greater Kruger areas. But the vegetation has just turned sort of brownish so quickly. It's a little bit more green around the water's edge, but that kind of makes sense. And as, there you go. That's that gurgling sound I was telling you that impala rams will make when they're starting to like declare their territories. Imagine you heard that for the first time and you're on safari, but you had no one to tell you what it was. Definitely a sound that would send shivers up your spine. Now look at that. Everything's so sort of very much those autumn hues. Look at it. Everything's yellow. Except some of the young leadwoods that are growing around here. They're still nice and green. But a nice big group of impala. This is where we need a sneaky leopard to slink on down. That's wishful thinking, though. But if we're going to see a leopard anywhere, right, it's probably going to be here at Sylvan. We'll know at the Sabi if we're going. Oh, interesting sounds. What I was going to say, if we are going to have a good chance of seeing a leopard, it's going to be here within the Sabi Sand Game Reserve. Best place to see leopards in South Africa. I'm just scanning just to see there's nothing making its way down towards the water. It's almost so difficult now to tell the difference between the lambs from last year and well the beginning of this year versus the adults. They grow so quickly. And then Mindy, you've asked, have I ever seen a crocodile walking around on land? Yes, I have. I've actually encountered them on bushwalks before, um, which is always interesting. And then I've seen them moving from one waterhole to another, and they're so big. Often when I've seen them moving from one area to another, it's done at nighttime when it's a little, it's a little bit cooler. I don't know if they're obviously using the darkness of the night, because if they're walking around during the day, it's quite an obvious thing to see. But there's been some amazing sightings at Mala Mala, which is not too far away from here. And they regularly see sightings where crocodiles come up onto land quite a distance away from the water and will try and steal carcasses from leopards and lions. Obviously, not if it's up in the tree, thanks to a leopard, but if it's down on the ground, it's insane. So it's something that we could see around here, of course, but I haven't actually ever seen it before. I've seen tracks and signs of where a crocodile has done that in Zambia, but never physically seen it. All the impala just popping their heads up every now and then. And beautiful big trees around this dam too. It's a great spot. But everybody, when I say everybody, all the birds especially, are going to start chatting quite a bit now. I also can't believe how dark it's getting. And I say this every single year in the low felt, and it's so funny because we don't really get a change from summer to winter. It's just all of a sudden one day the mornings are cooler and the evenings are cold. But it happens so suddenly, and we get surprised by it every single time, which makes me laugh. And I'm guilty because I also do that quite a bit. And now I can't remember why. Oh, and then yes, of course, I almost couldn't remember what I was going to say. But then, of course, comes that with how dark it gets so quickly. So this will be the last of the golden light. See, those shadows are extending quite a bit before eventually the sun pops behind the Drakensberg Mountains. Oh, okay, we've only got like 5 minutes left of the show, so we're going to say bye to Sylvan in the Sabi Sand Game Reserve, and we're going to head towards the Eastern Cape, which is where I'm from. And Shamari Game Reserve Founders is not far away from where I'm actually from. It's about an hour and a bit's drive. But we've got two rhinoceroses, white rhinos, having a drink. This is such a popular waterhole. Had some phenomenal sightings over the over the time since this camera has been up. And then again, just talking about how the sun has dropped. Only half of this rhino, or third of the rhino, is illuminated. Oh, there's another one. I think there's three rhinos, and who knows, there's probably a few more. So that rhino drinks quite noisily. I suppose rhinos are allowed to slurp, though. That's acceptable. I can tolerate that. Imagine what it would sound like if a rhinoceros had to blow its nose, if that's it just breathing. Like obviously it was expelling air a little bit quicker than normally. So you're going to get that increase in sound. And here come the other two. So it may be mother and sub-adult. Quite weary. I can't see if this individual on the left is a bull or a cow. But if it is a bull, this is something that we do see, is how the females can be hesitant. And especially if they have a slightly younger one inside of they're coming back into estrus again, because the males get so boisterous and they just follow the females around all the time. And that courtship process is over a few days. So they'll, again, if they can just wait for him to go, then sneak in and have a drink, they probably will do that. Otherwise, the thirst will get the better of them. Mindy, you said, wow, now that's golden lighting. Absolutely. This is it. It's my favorite. I do think the gold light in the low felt or the greater Kruger area is more spectacular. And that's just because of the change of color, the vegetation going a little bit more on the golden side too. So it just increases and enhances that light so nicely. With the Eastern Cape, for example, they don't have too many big trees and they have small evergreen shrubs. That's why it's known as the thicket biome, that tend to be evergreen. Yeah, it is a bull. You see that? Tails up, so that's an agitation sign, and moving off to the other way. I think those were both females, but I could be mistaken. I didn't have a proper look. So they maybe will just go off and wait. Perhaps they were listening to him exhale that air. Maybe he's not in the best of moods today and he kind of just wants to be left alone. Smart move by those two other individuals. No, he's just standing there enjoying the view, glancing over the rest of the reserve. So you can see, look at all those small evergreen shrubs in the open. The grass, of course, is also going to go, well, it's actually going to go a bit greener now because the rainy season within the Western and the Eastern Cape of South Africa is now during winter. And it's miserable. It's so cold. The grass should green up a little bit too. But anyways, it's been fun. I'm always surprised as to how quickly 45 minutes goes. I think we had nice variety of mammals as well as plenty of birds. And of course, it was great to have you on board. So thank you so much for all of your questions and all of your comments. But have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you may be in the world. And we'll see you on Thursday for Wild Moments.